Amy Baxter, editor of Retail Leader, and welcome to Trend Talk. Every week on Trend Talk, we're going to identify a trend across the retail industry with a keen eye toward grocery, convenience, and drug, and give it a deep dive with an industry insider. Today's guest is Peter Breen, editor-in-chief of the Path to Purchase Institute. I'm very excited to have Peter here, and today we're going to talk about some proprietary research from the Institute about shopper behavior on retailer websites. Now, Peter recently presented this research at the Path to Purchase Institute's Retail Media Forum event. So Peter, thanks so much for being here. Could you introduce yourself and share a little bit about how this research came to be?
Sure, Amy, and thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you. So one of the capabilities that we have wanted for a long time here at the Path to Purchase Institute was proprietary research. You know, it's something that we get requested by our members for very often. There's plenty of research out there, and especially over the past year plus, there has been a lot of research about shopper behavior. However, most of that has been at not the 30,000 foot level, at least a 1,000 foot level. You don't often see research that gets down to the tactic level, specifically what actions are shoppers taking while they're doing their shopping trips. That's where we wanted to go, and that's where we've always played at the Institute. You know, there's a lot of discussion about the strategy behind marketing, but not a lot of people going into the stores and looking at exactly what's going on there and what shoppers are doing and what brands are doing. And so we decided we would field some research. Now that we have the capability in-house to do proprietary research, take a look at specifically what shoppers are doing when they shop on retailer websites. One of the biggest trends right now, in fact, the biggest trend right now, except of course for the pandemic, is the emergence of retailers as media, retail websites, and the extension of retailer activity into other forms of digital media as a legitimate advertising tool, you know, not just a way to present a call to action for shoppers to buy something, but also a way to drive awareness and consideration for a brand, something, you know, that traditional media advertising used to always handle and then pass off to shopper marketing. So this has been a key trend in the industry. Retailers are building out their networks. It's another source of potential revenue, pretty lucrative potential source of revenue for retailers. So it's something that they want to get into. But everybody was talking about the networks themselves, not necessarily talking about what shoppers were doing on the websites. So that's where we jumped in and did a survey of 1,000 shoppers in January and specifically asked them, what makes you go to the website? And then when you're there, what are you doing? What tools are you using? What tactics are you employing to determine what products you're going to buy?
Yeah. And so I want to start sort of at a broad overview of shopper behaviors that are ongoing right now. Could you tell us what are some of the shopper behavior trends that you've seen in 2020 and coming into 2021? Just, you know, you could pick any one or two that you've seen, just a very broad overview of how shopper behaviors have changed in the last year.
Sure. So, I mean, the biggest one that we're all aware of is the dramatic shift toward online shopping, you know, toward buying products online. It was pretty dramatic through all categories. In the grocery marketplace, it was a huge shift. You know, the estimates vary. You know, I've heard some people say that as much as 10 years of expected growth in the migration toward online shopping happened last year. I don't know if it was that much, but certainly everybody agrees that it was at least 3 to 5 years of expected growth took place. You know, the stores shut down. People were worried about going into stores because of the coronavirus, and so people felt compelled to shop online rather than choosing to do so. And so there was a massive shift toward away from in-store shopping and toward online shopping. We expect that to kind of stay, you know, it's a bit of a pendulum, you know, so there was a dramatic shift toward that. We are expecting and already seeing some swing back toward in-store shopping, and that's still going to be critical for a long time, and still be the majority of sales will be involved in in-store trips for quite a long time. But the pendulum isn't going all the way back.
Hmm.
These shoppers who have adopted these online shopping behaviors, they largely liked what they experienced. And so what we're seeing is a hybrid omni-channel shopper, who's going to be going back to the store a lot more than they have over the past year, but is still going to use the e-commerce channels
Right.
going
Yeah.
forward too.
Well, getting into a little bit more detail, what are some of the top findings that came out of the research that you would highlight? Like these are main takeaways for the retailers.
I think it's starting off, before they get to the websites. I think we were a little surprised at the level of purposeful shopping, and most of the respondents to our survey said that most of the time they know why they're going to the website. They're not driven by advertising or an email, kind of prompted to go. Their intent is to do some shopping, and so they go to the website, with some specific purchases in mind. Still a significant amount of trips that are being driven by advertising and other kinds of promotional tools. But for the most part, it's a purposeful shopper who knows
Hmm.
what they're doing. Um, in terms of what they're doing when they get to the websites, it's kind of all over the board. And the one thing that really stood out is that there aren't a lot of behaviors that have been adopted to any real dramatic level by the shoppers out there. So the only tool on retailer websites that more than 50% of shoppers said they use almost every time or every time is search,
Hmm.
which of course is
Okay.
not surprising. That's well known, that is a key tool for shopping. And so that's the only one that's been adopted to a greater than 50% level. Among other ones, there is a lot of different tools that are being used in terms of how to find products beyond search on the site, whether you're going to category pages or you're looking at recipes or other types of ideas on how to use products, or you're going to your own purchase history if that's available through the retailer's website. So a lot of different tools that are being used to a certain degree, that can be helpful for their shopping experience. The other thing that we saw, though, however, is even though the tools aren't being used a whole lot, for the people who use those tools, they do have a pretty significant impact on their purchase decisions. So even some of the, I mentioned recipes, we didn't find a whole lot of shoppers who were utilizing recipe pages on retailer websites, but those who did, it really had a very strong influence over the products that they ultimately purchased. So it's important. Retailers and brands will have to work together to determine which of these tools might be most effective to build up usage
Hmm.
for them. Because one of the other things we did ask about and saw was that there is fairly low levels of awareness for a lot of these tools among the shoppers too. So part of the reason they're not using them is because they don't even really know they're there.
Yeah, that makes sense. The survey also looked at some apps from some the major retailers, and I noticed that Target like really stood out as an app winner. Audience, like their customers really use their app. Do you have any thoughts on why some apps have stood out rather than others?
I think part of it is probably just length of time out in the market. Target's app has been around for a little bit longer than some of the grocery chain
Hmm.
apps, for instance. But also, I think it's the nature of the shopper, first off in the channel, and then also specifically for the retailer. And I think Target's shopper profile, probably a little more urban, a little more sophisticated, if I could say that, without being rude to anybody, than a typical grocery shopper might be. And so probably a little more internet savvy, and technology savvy. than the average consumer might be. And so, yeah, it wasn't surprising. Target's shoppers were far more likely to use the app than any other retailer, but not much of a surprise because that's sort of the kind of the profile of the
Yeah.
Target shopper.
Okay. Well, on the flip side, did anything actually surprise you in the findings?
Um, no, not really. There was one area that it's somewhat controversial. During my presentation, I said it was kind of the spot where people might be raising eyebrows. Product detail pages
Hmm.
on retailer websites, have become a pretty extensive activity for brands, largely because retailers really want those PDPs to have an extensive amount of information, and in a lot of cases, it's a revenue stream for the retailers because there's some of the widgets and the tools that are on those pages are something that the retailer can charge the brand for having, and so it's incredibly hard work for brands to put together these pages and provide all the information that's necessary. They're not being used a whole heck of a lot beyond Amazon, and especially when you get to the grocery websites. So far, they're not being used extensively. As I said before, it looks like people kind of know what they want. So maybe they're going to the website and they're doing a search for cookies, and their search results come up and there's 3 or 4 brands they know, and that's where they go and they pick. Don't necessarily need to go to the brand page to learn more nutritional information about that product. So at the moment, there seems to be more work involved than is necessary based on usage, right?
Yeah,
Now,
that's the important thing, I think, because I think the big question, this is obvious, but it's why is it so important to understand what shoppers are doing for these retail media networks to be, take these insights? Why? Can you make that connection, I guess, put it together?
Yeah, so one of the issues that came up during our event last week a number of times is the fact that sometimes retailers lead with the monetizing
Mhm.
mindset rather than the solving the needs of shoppers mindset. So there's a new opportunity here to get advertising dollars, marketing dollars from brands, and so they say, okay, we'll set up display ads and we'll have paid search and we'll do this and we'll do that, and you can pay us money for it before investigating to make sure that these are the tools that the shoppers want, right? And we had one speaker, Spencer Baird from Inmar Intelligence last week, who made that point directly. And he said that we shouldn't be calling them retail media networks. We should be calling them retail marketing networks, because a media network leads with the monetization mindset, and then hopefully you are solving shopper needs while you are monetizing. A retail marketing network flips that model, and
Right.
you are solving shopper needs. And because you're solving shopper needs, you are going to sell more products. And when you sell more products, you're then going to be able to charge more for your media opportunities, and therefore drive the monetization that way.
Yeah, seems like a tricky balance at the moment.
Yeah, and it's retailer by retailer. There are some retailers. We're not going to get into any specific names here, but some retailers have always been very good at collaboration, and really taking that shopper-centric mindset, and others have been a little overly opportunistic over the years, and just saw it as a way to drive more revenue.
Hmm. Cool. Well, so for my last question, I just kind of want to know, what are your predictions for the future? I think we all know shoppers are going to continue digging in online, but what sort of innovations maybe do you imagine that retailers will come up with based on the trends that they're seeing and the data that they're understanding of how their customers are interacting with their websites?
I think one of the big things we're looking at here is I mentioned before, digital media as a awareness and consideration tool versus a call to action tool. I think we're seeing those two camps come together where any digital advertising opportunity can theoretically be a call to action as well. And maybe you're even missing an opportunity if you don't use it as such. And so the potential is always there to not only drive awareness for your product, but then immediately give the viewer the mechanism to go buy that product immediately.
Mhm.
However, there has to be some consideration given to bothering people when they don't want to be bothered. I think one of the other things that might have been a surprise in the results of the survey was that there was comparatively pretty extensive click-throughs of display advertising on
Mm.
retailer websites. Again, not to a huge extent percentage-wise, but compared to typical click-through rates of banner advertising, digital advertising, across the marketplace, really strong results. And again, respondents saying that these ads had a pretty significant impact on their purchase decisions. So I think that's kind of proof that when they are receptive to the advertising, if
Mhm.
you're shopping and you see an ad for a product, you're more likely to view that as helpful. And the comparison I always use is I pretty much every night will check NHL.com because I'm a
Mhm.
hockey fan, and so I'm there to look at the scores. When I get an ad for for a snack or a beverage while I'm looking for the hockey scores, not exactly the place
Yeah.
that I'm going to be receptive to that kind of advertising. So I think the issue is now that the world has opened up to the idea of all digital media being shoppable, being used to drive purchases, we got to make sure that we're putting the mechanisms in place to do it the proper way and make sure that it's always relevant, right place, right time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there are just a ton of insights for retailers and brands within the research, which is available as a special report on the Path to Purchase Institute website. So, Peter, thank you so much for the overview of the research that you guys covered and sharing your insights. I'm sure there's a lot to understand from it, even way more than we talked about, obviously. But thank you so much. And that's going to do it for us on Trend Talk this week. We'll see you back here next week with another retail trend.